Hey, good afternoon to everybody. Well, I guess that's when I'm recording this, Tuesday afternoon. This is the Fit in the Form podcast for the CJ Cup, and this one's probably going to be a little bit shorter, the second portion of the Awesemo Golf Podcast weekly series, and depending on where you are listening to this or what you're consuming this through, if you're looking for the first portion, the Opening Tee podcast, the easiest way to find it is go to the Awesemo.com homepage, click on the podcast network, scroll over to find Awesemo Golf, and there will be listed all of these three podcasts each and every week, so an easy way for you to find it. Now, in this Fit in the Form podcast, this one might be a little bit, no, it's not might, it's definitely going to be quite a bit shorter since we don't have any course history, and it's a no-cut event, so half of my I'll say a third of my talking points on the recent form is gone. Course history, there is none, so we can't even talk about that. So I would say, maybe even half of the material is out the window, but nonetheless, we are going to talk about it anyway. So if you missed my first cut article, I actually just updated it, or even if you read it, I just updated it. The Greenskeeper report has come out. So I've got a little bit more detailed information in terms of what the rough length is going to be. And the rough length this week is going to go 3 to 4 inches as Shadow Creek in its preparations have attempted to make it a little bit harder. Certainly is going to play much harder than last week. I still expect it to be relatively low scoring, but 62 is the course record, so obviously the course does have some very difficult parts to it. And we saw Mickelson and Woods in the match in 2018 struggle a little bit with it as well. Just to recap there, Tiger, he hit about 11 of 18 greens, Mickelson 13 of 18 greens, and they each hit about 10 of 14 fairways. So now let's go ahead, that we've set the stage for Shadow Creek Golf Course, and talk about some golfers that, regardless of the course, they've been playing well recently, and that is Dustin Johnson. He's the only PGA Tour golfer in this field to have 5 top 10s over the last 11 weeks. The other golfer that has done that in this field is a guy named Kyung Lee, a 21-year-old from South Korea, playing his golf on the Korean PGA Tour. One of the 5 golfers in the field from the Korean PGA Tour, or how they got exempt into this. Like I said, a 21-year-old. He has 5 top 10s in the last 11 weeks, 6 top 25s as well, which we'll talk about in a second. Xander Schauffele, he's the only golfer with 4 or more than 4 or more. Actually, I should say that was a little bit of a mouthful there. 4 or more top 10s in the last 11 weeks, while 9 others have 3. Some of those names include Jon Rahm, Justin Thomas, and Matthew Wolff. When we switch over to the top 25s, I mentioned this Lee character from the Korean Tour has 6 of them. Dustin Johnson does as well. And they're joined by Kevin Kisner and Xander Schauffele with 6 in the last 11 weeks. Scotty Scheffler, Hideki Matsuyama, Brendan Todd, Danny Berger, and Louis Oosthuizen all have 5. 3 other golfers in this top 25 category have had a top 25 in all of their starts over the last 11 weeks. That's Johnson, Lee, and Schauffele. Whereas Alex Noren has gone 4 for 5, and Daniel Berger has gone 5 for 6. So some pretty good consistency there. We flip over to the negative side of things, which of course we always want to look at, maybe in terms of finding a golfer that could be looking to bust out of the slump, or one that might still be continued in it. And 27 golfers this week will be searching for their first top 10 in the last 11 weeks. Some of the more notable names there: Kevin Na, Dylan Fratelli, Gary Woodland, Ricky Fowler, of course, Jordan Spieth, and Corey Connors. Some names there. And then the top 25 names, I guess maybe I'll be a little bit bold and I'll say maybe one of those 6 guys gets a top 10 this week. I don't know. They're all playing pretty poorly, but maybe Corey Connors, he's kind of sprung to life a little bit recently. Maybe he's the guy to get it done. Woodland's been hurt. I don't know if he's quite ready. It's only been a couple of weeks since the U.S. Open where he blamed the miscut on his hip injury. Dylan Fratelli did pop up last week, but tough field. And Ricky Fowler, man, he just looks a little lost out there. In terms of the top 25s, Adam Hadwin, Andrew Landry, Michael Thompson, Mark Leishman, KH Lee, Sung Kang, and Nick Taylor all searching for their first top 25 in the past 10 weeks. Certainly out of form, I would consider all of those guys. Although Hadwin had a chance last week, and in fact, he shot 9 under on Saturday to get him into the top 5 going into Sunday, or top 10 going into Sunday, but had a terrible Sunday, so he fell back in the pack. But he was trending at least in the right direction. Okay, now let's go over to our strokes gained information, as that is all the recent form notes that I have. Of course, if you're looking for all of the recent form information or my recent form sheet, where I give you 11 weeks of every golfer in the field, no matter what golf tour they played on, as long as it's a professionally ranked golfing event. What I mean by ranked is that it's the OWGR actually recognizes it. You know, there's these minor tour events, minor league golf tour events that the OWGR does not recognize, so I try not to include those when I see them. But in any case, you want to go check that out. Check out my Fit and Form article, free each and every week on the Awesemo.com website. And of course, if you want to see how I rank that, how I factor in some of that lesser fields or worse fields, great time to become an Awesemo member, because guess what? Masters Week is only a month away as well. So if you want to try us out, come see what we have going on for this week so that you can get prepared for the big tournament coming up in the Masters. I think we might even get 2 millionaire makers for it. I know we're going to get at least one. Check us out, $8.95 for the week. Or if you want to get Masters coverage, it's now Tuesday, so it's going to take you up. This 30-day pass will take you up all the way through Tuesday of the Masters Week. That's just $29.95 for the month. And of course, with all the sports going on, there's no time or better value than the Awesemo Plus Platinum Pass, $29.95 for the week. You're going to get access to all of our premium tools, data, writing, content, doesn't matter. You're going to get it all for $29.95. We've got MLB going on. We've got, of course, NFL now in full swing. We've got golf. We've got PGA. Each and every week, we're getting six-figure prize pools six-figure to first place. So a lot to play for. Of course, we've got LOL, MMA, NASCAR. It is all going on right now. Great time to join. Okay, let's talk about strokes gained, which is how the golfers are getting it done. In terms of total strokes gained, we've got some, obviously, the best players in the world here this week, and Rory McIlroy has still been the most consistent out of any golfer. Tony Finau and Justin Thomas, however, have caught him as the only golfers in the field to have gained 2 or more strokes total 10 plus times in the data set. And just so you guys know, the data set goes back to the 2019 PGA Championship. It's quite a while ago, but that was held at Bethpage in May of 2019. So almost 46 events I've got in the data set that we're looking at. Justin Thomas and Xander Schauffele, however, have the most consistent track record, going 14 of 24 and gaining at least 1.5 strokes total. Hideki Matsuyama's in at 50%, where Rory McIlroy, Dustin Johnson, Patrick Cantlay, and Harris English, they're all above 50% in terms of gaining 1.5 strokes on the field. And now when we look a little bit more recently here about guys that have performed well, DJ obviously had that otherworldly performance at the Northern Trust a month and a half or so ago. Then others that have played very well recently over the last 11 weeks in terms of strokes gained total. Billy Horschel, Siwoo Kim, and Kevin Kisner are a couple of the names that you wouldn't think about. Obviously, a few of the names that you would think about would be like Matt Wolff and Xander Schauffele. Both find themselves having had good weeks in the last 10. When we take putting out of the equation now, Justin Thomas and Hideki Matsuyama are the only two golfers to have gained 1.75 strokes tee to green 10 times in the data set. Morikawa has done it 9, or 4 others have done it 8, including Russ Henley, Victor Hovland, and Rory McIlroy. When we switch over to percentage of starts, Justin Thomas, 66% of the time he's gaining at least a stroke tee to green. That's very impressive. Dustin Johnson, 62%. John Rahm, first time I'm saying his name in 5 categories. He's done it 59% of the time. Rory McIlroy, Victor Hovland, also over 50%, and the only guys over 50% are the ones I just mentioned. Cam Smith, Paul Casey, Keegan Bradley, Mark Hubbard, and are some random names that have popped up in the last 10 or so weeks in terms of their performance tee to green. All the golfers that I just mentioned have as well. Those were just some of the more, I shouldn't say random names, maybe more of the less notable names in this field, as it is a very strong field. Okay, now we're going to talk about off the tee and Champ. Cameron Champ is still long-term, has the highest upside in this field. Bryson is not in this field this week. He's taking off until the Masters, so we don't have to worry about that. But that paves the way for Cameron Champ to have the highest upside in terms of strokes gained off the tee. But Rory's been the most consistent. Also that have been very consistent, Sungjae Im, Matt Wolff, Sergio Garcia, Corey Connors, and Jason Kokrak, who have all gained at least half a stroke in 50% of their starts. There's 8 more guys that have done it for about 12 of 78 in the field. Recently, Sergio Garcia has been absolutely on fire, as well as Sung Jae Im, who's coming off of a week where he led the field in strokes gained off the tee at TPC Summerlin, so look for him to maybe utilize that skill set this week on a course where hitting the fairway could be seen as a higher premium, given the rough length, going to be 3 to 4 inches, which is a full inch and a half higher than it was last week. So should see a bit more premium on hitting the fairway this week. Okay, switching over to the approaches now, and you always want to take a look at guys that can get really hot with their approaches, maybe even more for a showdown format, because we know that if you get hot with your approaches, you're going to have the best quality birdie looks. Now, setting up those birdie looks or setting up the approaches obviously dictates off the tee, but a golfer can certainly have good approach shots, even not having a good off the tee game. A couple of those guys that have been performed high, I should say their ceiling is higher than most, is Colin Morikawa and Victor Hovland. They have gained more than a stroke 10 times, the only golfers to have done so. However, when we take a look at consistency, so golfers gaining at least a half a stroke, Justin Thomas has been the most consistent, gaining half a stroke in 70% of his starts. Victor Hovland and Paul Casey are coming in just shy of that, somewhere in the high 60%, where 9 other golfers other than those 3 have gained at least a half a stroke in 50% of their starts. Some names among them: Joaquin Niemann, Tom Hoagie, and Tyrell Hatton, who won last week's BMW PGA Championship. Okay, now this week, we should have plenty of more missed greens with that higher rough than we did last week. But this category is a little bit misleading. I think it's probably the most misleading category in terms of strokes gained, because you only have the opportunity to gain strokes around the green if you miss the green, right? I mean, maybe that's pretty standard in saying, and I make myself chuckle when I say that, but most of the time, we don't want our golfers missing the green. It is inevitable that they will. Not many people hit 72 of 72 greens in a week. In fact, I'm not sure it's been done for quite some time now. But regardless, it is the Jordan Spieth category. He is the only one to gain at least a half a stroke in 50% or more of his starts. And he's also the only one to have gained over a stroke more than 6 times. He's done it 7. Byung-Hun An, Keegan Bradley, Brian Harmon have done it 6 times. But in reality, we really don't. It's great to see that Spieth is good around the greens, but really that only helps us in saving pars or saving a birdie on a par 5. Because we would much rather have him putting for birdie or putting for eagle each time. Speaking of putting, Spieth now sucks at putting. Speaking of Jordan Spieth, he hasn't gained a quarter of a stroke in the last 8 weeks. Not even a quarter. So something that he relied on for his game has gone very cold, which is bad because the rest of his game is bad as well. So Taylor Gooch has actually passed him in terms of guys that have gained over 1.25 strokes putting on the field, and he's done it 7 times. Spieth has done it 6 times. A couple of other guys have done it 6 times as well. And then when we switch to looking at the last couple or so weeks, actually I'll give you a few more names: Daniel Berger, Kevin Na, Brendan Todd, and Billy Horschel, along with Alex Noren. They've all gained over 1.25 strokes 6 times. Xander Schauffele, Louis Oosthuizen, Sung Jae Im, Kevin Kisner, and Brian Harmon have done it 5 times. So I would consider those guys some of the best putters on tour. Now, when we switch to looking at gaining at least a quarter of a stroke in the last 10 weeks, only one golfer has done it 6 times, and that's Brian Harmon. Mackenzie Hughes has done it 5, and then a handful have done it at 4 times: Brendan Todd, Kevin Kisner, Adam Long, Richie Werenski, Carlos Ortiz, and ready for this name, Paul Casey. His putting has really picked up recently. Siwoo Kim has as well. So Paul Casey maybe this week with the week where hitting the fairways will be a little bit more premium, not as low scoring, probably going to be low owned coming off of a missed cut there. Maybe somebody to take a look at for this week, certainly as a low owned play. Speaking of low owned plays, I'm about 15 minutes, so I did a pretty good job with no course history here. If you're looking for the third and final portion of the Awesemo Golf Podcast weekly series, the Against the Grain pod, will be out tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning, somewhere around 9:30, and I'm going to give you the entire slates breakdown for the ownership for PGA DFS, specifically on DraftKings. I may touch on FanDuel a little bit as well. But it's a good one, and so vitally important each and every week. I'm sure by now, if you've listened to my content, you heard about my $40,000 blunder. And if I had just gone to the Against the Grain article last week that I had written, which, of course, my podcast is based on, I would have easily not made the decision I made because ownership is so vitally important, and the two guys that I took out were much less owned than the two guys I put in. So I'm going to make sure I don't make that mistake again this week and give you my top plays here on the pod tomorrow. So thank you all for joining the Fit in the Form podcast this week. Hopefully you found some useful information out of it and some players you can target for your lineups this week. So until next time, everybody, we will see you on the other side. Have a good day. Cheers.